Disney's Scary Storybook Collection. Winnie the Pooh, boo to you, Winnie the Pooh. Once each year, as October breezes puff and bluster, there comes a most particular and most peculiar night, when the dark grows a little more so, and the trees jitter and rattle their leaves, until they chatter like frightened teeth. On this particular and peculiar night, Winnie the Pooh was dressed as a giant bee, and pouring the contents of a large pot of honey into his mouth. "Practicing for Halloween," he said with a chuckle between gulps. "Though I'm not fond of tricking, I do enjoy the treating, especially of myself." Just as Pooh was savoring the last smackerel of sweetness, a creature in baggy pajamas with a skeleton painted on them bounced on him. "Not late, am I?" asked Tigger, for of course that was who the bouncer was. Behind Tigger there were two Eeyores, one wrapped in bandages like a mummy, and the other a sort of bedraggled Eeyore-like creature. "Hello, Eeyore," said Pooh to the mummified donkey. "And hello, Gopher," he said to the other Eeyore. "Ding-dag-nabbit," said Gopher. "How am I supposed to win the best costume contest if you know it's me?" "Come on, Pooh," cried Tigger. "We better get a move on." "Not," Pooh said, "until our good friend Piglet joins us." Meanwhile, strange things were happening at Piglet's house. Crouched in the middle of his parlor was the most horrible pretend spookable costume that the very small animal could put together. "If I'm not scared of something as frightful as this," Piglet said, "I won't be afraid of anything this Halloween." At that moment the front door was flung open and Piglet was joyfully bounced on by Tigger the skeleton. "Boo-hoo-hoo!" shouted Tigger. "Why, Piglet," said the surprised Pooh, "where's your costume?" "Yeah, look at the time," said Tigger. "It's 1/2 to sunset. We gotta get to Halloweenin'." "Oh, Piglet said, stammering. "And while Piglet is figuring out what he will be this Halloween," said Pooh, "I think I should try out my costume by tricking a small smackerel of something sweet from our friends at the honey tree." "But Pooh," Piglet said, "perhaps it would be best." Pooh said, "If you didn't call me by my given name, it might make the bees suspicious." "Enough jabbering," said Tigger. "Let's go terrifying." So much to Piglet's distress, they followed Pooh, but they were on their way back almost immediately, running as fast as they could, with a blizzard of angry buzzing bees close behind. Not too far down the path, Rabbit was in the middle of his pumpkin patch, his chest swelling with pride as he stepped from one pumpkin to another. The sudden approach of a buzzing noise caused Rabbit to look up, but there was no time for him to utter a word, as Pooh, Piglet, Tigger, and Eeyore crashed past him, tumbling into the patch. The bees, seeing Rabbit standing still, swarmed him in a humming hurricane of anger. At that very last instant, Rabbit realized he was in danger and ducked. The bee swooped over his head, between his ears, into the knothole of a tree behind him. The resourceful Rabbit quickly covered the hole with a bucket, trapping the belligerent bees inside. Rabbit then surveyed the state of his pumpkins and his friends and shook his head in exasperation. "Of all my favorite holidays," he said with a sigh, "Halloween isn't one." Very soon night fell, and Halloween officially arrived along with a storm. Everyone hurried home. At his house, Piglet scurried around, frantically blocking his front door with furniture. All about were posted signs that read "Spookables, scram! No ghosts allowed, and goblins go home." So when a knock sounded at his front door, Piglet was not at all eager to answer it. "Who's there?" he squeaked, keeping his hands over his eyes. "It's me, them, us," said a very Pooh-sounding voice. "Pooh Bear," said Piglet, "how can I be certain it's really you? Perhaps if you say something only you would say, then I'd be certain. How about 'I am Pooh'?" "You are?" said the now totally confused Pooh. "Then who am I?" "Pooh Bear," squealed Piglet as he opened the door to reveal Pooh, Tigger, and Eeyore. "Piglet," said Pooh, "will you be joining us for Halloween?" "I'm afraid I'm just really too afraid," Piglet said nervously. "That's quite all right," said Pooh Bear. "We'll simply not have Halloween. This Halloween shall be a Hallowasn't." "Thank you, Pooh Bear," Piglet said, smiling. Later that night, the storm began to rage fiercely. Pooh watched it from his window and frowned. "I hope Piglet is not too frightened," he said. He is, of course, all alone. Gazing out of his window, Pooh said, I suspect that something should be done, but what? He concentrated fiercely. Think, 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 he muttered. And to no one's greater surprise than his own, he did just that. Why, said Pooh, just because Piglet can't have Halloween with us, there's no reason why we can't have Halloween with him. At Tigger's house, the fearless feline was putting the finishing touches on a ghost costume. Suddenly, Tigger's front door opened to reveal two figures covered in sheets. Spookables! Hollered Tigger as he tried to hide behind himself and tripped over his tail and fell. The Spookables removed their sheets, and Pooh and Eeyore grinned down at Tigger. We're on our way to Piglet's to have a Halloween, said Pooh. Would you care to join us? What are we standing around here for? Tigger said, snatching up his own ghost costume. They had almost reached Piglet's house when a tree branch snagged a corner of Pooh's bedsheet. Pooh was certain he'd been clutched by the cold claw of a Spookable. Help! Shouted the startled Pooh. Spookables! Pooh Bear, Piglet said. He had heard Pooh's shouts from inside his house. Tigger and Eeyore, still wrapped in their ghostly bedsheets, were trying to free Pooh from the branch. Oh no, cried Piglet. Spookables have Pooh. I must save him. Halloween or no Halloween. Suddenly Piglet noticed the Spookable costume he had pulled together earlier today. I'll show these Spookables what trick-or-treating is all about, he cried, putting on the costume. A few moments later, Piglet's front door was thrown open. He walked outside wearing a scary costume, determined to rescue Pooh. Boo! Said the Spookable in a small voice. Then a bit louder. Boo! Pooh, Eeyore, and Tigger looked up in horror and ran down the path, leaving Pooh's costume in the possession of the tree branch. They then ran past a startled Gopher, who was now clad in a rabbit costume topped with long floppy ears. Look out, Spookables, they screamed. Gopher Rabbit looked up the path just as Piglet ran into him. They both went rolling after the others. Rabbit, trying to keep his pumpkins dry with an umbrella, glanced up and had just enough time to mutter, "Oh no, not again," before Pooh, Tigger, and Eeyore collided into him. Then Piglet and Gopher collided into them, and everyone went rolling as pieces of costume went flying. Finally, they untangled themselves and discovered that there was not a single Spookable to be seen. Help, said Gopher. He was sitting in the middle of the garden wearing a pumpkin. What a wonderful costume, Gopher, said a very impressed Eeyore. I particularly like your hat, agreed Rabbit. No doubt about it, Gopher, said Tigger. It's the best costume yet. Yippee, Gopher cheered, stepping out of his costume and taking a bow. I knew I could do it. And I knew that Piglet could do it too, said Pooh. Do what? Asked the puzzled Piglet. You saved us all, said Pooh. You're here and the Spookable isn't, so you must have chased it away. Say, that's right. Way to go, Piglet, said Tigger. All of Piglet's friends shook his very small hand as he puffed up with pride. Wait, half a second, Piglet, said Tigger. You never did figure out where you're going to be for Halloween. Oh, but I have, Piglet said with a smile. I've decided to go as Pooh's very best and very bravest friend. And that, said Pooh, smiling down at Piglet, is the thing I'd most like you to be. The end.